Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the weeds, moving past the usual self-help stuff. We're looking at personal transformation, self-mastery, but through a lens that combines, interestingly, neuroscience and even, well, quantum physics.
That's right. It's about the nuts and bolts. The source material we're digging into today, it really frames this as a rigorous scientific process. We're looking for genuine change, the kind that sticks, which means rewiring things at a fundamental level, not just surface stuff.
Okay, right. So our mission here is to pull out the key insights. How does the brain actually structure who we are? And crucially, what's the step-by-step process for, like, installing a new version of yourself? We want to show you why this isn't just, nice ideas. It's based on observable biological processes.
Exactly. And the core idea is pretty challenging. Real mastery demands a shift in your basic operating system, who you fundamentally are. So yeah, we need to understand what that system is before we can even think about changing it.
Okay, perfect starting point. When we talk about changing ourselves, what is that self we need to change for it to be real, lasting transformation? Is it just like behavior modification?
It goes much deeper than just behavior. Genuine change means shifting your core personality. And the way our sources define personality is quite concrete. It's the sum total of your habitual thoughts, actions, and emotions. How you think, act, and feel consistently.
Right, thoughts, actions, emotions. Sounds straightforward, but why is that definition so critical? And why is changing it, well, why does it feel so hard sometimes?
Because that combination, thoughts, actions, feelings, repeated over and over, it literally shapes your brain. Every time you repeat a thought or an action or feel a certain way, you're reinforcing specific neural circuits, like you're paving neurological highways.
So it's not just a metaphor, this repetition trap.
Yeah.
If I constantly worry, I'm actually physically making my brain better at worrying.
You are. You're strengthening those connections. It becomes the brain's default pathway, the path of least resistance. Essentially, this personality becomes a subconscious program. Some studies suggest, by our mid-30s, maybe 95% of who we are is just this set of automatic programs running in the background. Unconscious stuff.
Wow, okay. So you're literally fighting your own brain's physical structure when you try to change. That really sets the stage. So if the issue is this automated subconscious program, step one has to be interrupting it, right?
Yeah.
What's the first move in this rewiring process?
Absolutely. The first non-negotiable step is becoming conscious of those unconscious patterns. You simply can't change a program you're not aware is running. And our source is stress. This isn't easy. Getting that awareness is tough because the body itself is kind of hooked on the familiar.
Which brings us to that fascinating concept, emotional addictions. You might decide intellectually, I want to be happy, but your body keeps pulling you back to, say, feeling anxious or frustrated.
Exactly. The sources really zero in on this, especially addictions to negative states like chronic stress and fear. And there's real neurochemistry behind it. When you're stressed, you get that flood of cortisol, adrenaline. Your body gets chemically conditioned like it expects and almost craves those hormones.
Wait, so you're saying people could be genuinely physically addicted to the feeling of stress, like their body chemistry demands it?
In a very real sense, yes. The body, particularly the limbic system, starts to associate that familiar chemical state, even if it's stress, with baseline, with survival almost. So breaking that chemical dependency, that addiction to the old self's feelings is absolutely crucial. Otherwise, the body just keeps signaling the mind to return to the old ways of thinking.
Okay, this is where it gets really practical. The sources talk about things like immersive retreats, deep meditation, but, for someone listening who's got a job, family, they can't just disappear for 2 weeks. What do the sources suggest for, daily practice? How do you build that awareness and start breaking those patterns in the middle of a busy life?
That's a very important question. And yeah, while those intensive methods can definitely speed things up, the principles can be applied daily. It's about carving out dedicated time, maybe just 20 or 30 minutes for a specific kind of meditation. The goal isn't just to relax, it's interruption. You actively observe your internal state. You notice that automatic feeling bubbling up, the irritation, the worry, and you consciously decide not to follow it with the usual thought pattern. You consciously stop the reaction.
Ah, okay. So you're creating a small gap, a pause between the feeling and the automatic thought or behavior that usually follows. You're literally trying to stop that chemical chain reaction.
Precisely. You're refusing to automatically run the old program. And once you start getting better at that interruption, at breaking that chain, then you move to step 2.
Which is building the new self, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we've stopped the old program momentarily. How do we install the new one? How do we build the personality we actually want?
The main tool here is mental rehearsal. This isn't just wishful thinking. It's a focused technique to build and strengthen new neural circuitry. You're using your conscious mind to vividly, intentionally practice being that new personality, thinking the new thoughts, feeling the new emotions, planning the new actions before you even do them in the real world.
Okay, mental rehearsal. What's happening biologically when we do that? You mentioned new circuits. Is it like neurons that fire together, wire together?
That's exactly it. When you mentally rehearse with focus and intention, you're activating your prefrontal cortex, your conscious brain. By repeatedly making the brain fire in those new desired sequences, you trigger protein synthesis, you encourage the growth of new connections, new dendrites. The brain, interestingly, doesn't always make a huge distinction between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. So you're essentially pre-paving the neural pathways for your future self, installing the software, preparing the hardware.
That really elevates visualization, doesn't it? It's not just a psychological trick. It's a biological necessity for this kind of change. Now, let's talk about the feeling of that new self. Once you break free from the stress cycle, the sources don't just say be neutral. They emphasize specific elevated emotions. Why is that so important? Why focus on things like gratitude or love?
Right. This is where we see really tangible biological benefits. These aren't just pleasant feelings, they're functional states. The sources point specifically to emotions like gratitude and love because they induce a state scientists call coherence,
Coherence. What does that mean biologically? How would you even measure that?
primarily through heart rate variability or HRV. When you're experiencing these elevated, sustained emotions, your heart rhythm becomes very orderly, very sine wave-like. It signals a synchronized, harmonious state between your heart and brain. Basically, your nervous system shifts. It moves out of the sympathetic fight or flight mode driven by stress and into the parasympathetic rest and digest mode.
Okay, so the immediate benefit is calming the nervous system, getting out of that survival state, measurable through HRV. But you mentioned physical health, too, specifically the immune system. How does feeling grateful actually make you healthier?
Well, sustained coherence helps reduce the baseline stress that drives chronic inflammation, which is linked to so many diseases. When you're coherent, you produce less cortisol over time. That reduces inflammatory markers, things like IL-6. Plus, some studies highlighted in the sources show that practicing gratitude and compassion can increase levels of salivary IgA. That's an important antibody, kind of like a first line of defense for your immune system.
Wow, okay. So your emotional state isn't just in your head, it's directly talking to your immune cells. Choosing gratitude becomes like a biological strategy.
It absolutely is. It connects your inner world, your subjective experience, directly to your physical health and resilience. Your feelings literally become biological instructions.
This leads perfectly into the biggest, maybe most surprising claim. This whole framework draws on both neuroscience and quantum physics. We've got the brain circuits, the chemistry. Where does quantum physics come into this?
Yeah, this is where the material gets really fascinating and pushes the boundaries a bit. The assertion is that the highly coherent state that ordered energy achieved through elevated emotions and focused mental rehearsal doesn't just change you internally. It creates a measurable external field effect.
A field effect. Are we talking about something like the observer effect from quantum physics? The idea that consciousness or observation influences reality?
That's very much the territory, yes. The idea is that when your brain and heart are highly coherent, you're generating a more powerful, more organized electromagnetic signal or field. And the claim, drawing on quantum principles, is that this coherent consciousness can interact with the quantum field, the field of potentials, and actually influence probabilities, essentially helping to manifest the outcomes you're mentally rehearsing.
So it's not just making your thoughts positive. It's about generating a coherent biological energy signature, aligned thoughts and emotions that can actually interact with the world around you.
That's the model proposed. It reframes transformation as mastering your own measurable energy field. And this brings us back to the science part. The sources are insistent that this isn't just theory or belief. It's grounded in scientific evidence gathered from people undergoing these transformations.
Okay, that's crucial. What kind of evidence? How do they measure this stuff that sounds, frankly, a bit mystical?
They use objective measurements, things like brain scans, quantitative EEGs showing increased coherence between different brain regions. They measure heart rate variability, as we discussed. They look at changes in gene expression epigenetics, showing certain genes related to health and longevity being upregulated. They track blood markers like cortisol levels, immune cell counts. The argument is, look, the internal work produces these measurable, objective changes in biology and neurology. The data supports the method.
That really shifts the perspective. It takes these profound internal experiences and aims to anchor them in measurable biological processes.
Exactly, which leads to that core philosophical statement underpinning this work. The idea that science is becoming the contemporary language of mysticism. It's providing a modern framework, a mechanism, and validation for experiences and potentials that were once purely in the realm of the mystical or spiritual.
Okay, this has been incredibly rich. A really detailed look at the mechanics of change. Let's try to quickly recap the essential steps for everyone listening.
Yeah, first, remember, your current personality is largely a subconscious program, built from repeated thoughts, actions, and feelings.
Step one isn't forcing new behaviors, it's becoming deeply conscious of that old program. And crucially, working to break any chemical addiction to familiar negative emotions, especially stress and fear.
Then, step two, mental rehearsal. You have to dedicate focused time to mentally practicing being your future self, thinking, feeling, and acting as that person to physically build the new neural pathways.
And finally, you sustain and amplify this by cultivating elevated emotions, specifically gratitude and love.
Yeah.
These aren't just nice feelings, they create measurable coherence, boosting your biology, especially your immune system.
It's a complete system, really, from awareness to biology to maybe even influencing your reality.
So thinking about all this, what does it mean for you right now listening to this? Since real change involves reprogramming those subconscious habits, particularly the emotional ones, we want to leave you with a question to reflect on.
Think about your own patterns. What's the single most persistent, repetitive emotion or maybe background feeling that you run almost automatically day in and day out? Is it impatience? Worry? Maybe a subtle feeling of lack or self-criticism? Identifying that core, familiar emotional state, your primary emotional addiction, you could say that's the starting point. Recognizing it is the first real step toward choosing something different.